Hello all and welcome to Astro Wheel of Fortune. My name is Vlada and I read tarot, and today I'm doing a reading on the High Priestess. So I'm doing a series, as some of you may know, on this channel where I ask my tarot deck and the card itself, each card in the major arcana, what does the card want us to know as a collective? Is there anything that we're missing about that card as a collective? Is there anything that we should be more aware of about that specific card? And I'm going to be doing these types of readings for each of the cards in the major arcana within the tarot. So today we're doing the High Priestess. We're going to be looking at what the High Priestess wants to tell us, what energies we might be missing out on, or is there something that the High Priestess wants to add onto her energy that maybe most of the collective is not really paying attention to. So we've got the cards here. I pulled the High Priestess out already. As many of you know as well, if you've been watching my other readings where I've done the Fool card and I've done the Magician card, I'll also be referring to this book. This is the book that I've been referring to, The Tarot, History, Symbolism, and Divination by Robert M. Place. I may refer to this book throughout the reading as this is kind of the book that started this series. This is the book that inspired me to do this series. So let's get into it. So we've got the High Priestess, and we're going to be asking the High Priestess, is there anything that she wants us to know about her energy as a card? Is there anything that we should know about the energy of the High Priestess as a card that we're maybe missing, or is there anything specific that you want to talk about, the High Priestess? So let's get into it. If you want to watch the rest of the readings that I've done in this series, check out the playlist that I've made. It's Tarot by Tarot, and it will have all of these readings in that playlist. Okay, but let's focus on the High Priestess. We've got the Five of Wands, which is, I didn't expect to get the Five of Wands for the High Priestess. So let me think. High? Okay, Five of Wands. There is something that I'm picking up with the High Priestess that she wants to say, that she keeps secrets. She is the keeper of sacred knowledge. She is also, in this book by Robert M. Place, is actually where he talks about her being representative of non-Christian religions, like such as paganism. So in the Marseille order, the Papess resides before the Empress and the Emperor, and the Pope is positioned after. Oh yeah, he talks about the High Priestess and the Hierophant as a pair. So that is just something that is possibly worthy of note as well. In this book, he talks about the High Priestess and the Hierophant as a pair. But, you know, I felt I wanted to do its own video for the High Priestess and its own video for the Hierophant, but there is a lot of instances in this book where he refers to the High Priestess holding the knowledge of religions that were more associated with pagan traditions and pagan type of religions. And for some reason I'm picking up on something here with that, but it's more than that, because there's a feeling with the High Priestess that I'm picking up on, that she wants us to know that her energy has a lot more conflict to it than maybe we recognize. She's kind of like, I'm kind of getting a polarizing figure. There's something with the High Priestess that she's showing up in terms of polarity. It's like, you either love me or you hate me kind of energy that I'm getting with the High Priestess, and this is not something that I expected to get. And what I'm picking up with the High Priestess and the Five of Wands being here is that the High Priestess energy, when it pops out in a reading, is meant to represent that middle ground of well, half of the people hate me and half of the people love me, so what is the truth? Half of the people reject me and half of the people completely embrace me, so what is the truth? And so we're not able to know the truth. And so when these kind of topics or things or people show up in the world where they are so polarizing that, there's no majority that love them or there's no majority that hate them, it's pretty much split half and half, they create almost like a portal. That energy, that kind of subject or that kind of person creates a portal. So the High Priestess wants us as a collective, anyone that reads tarot, to understand that her energy is a lot more conflicting. It's actually not so peaceful. It's not so, it's involved in both sides. It plays both sides as well. A High Priestess energy is an energy that plays both sides, but plays both sides with dignity, because it doesn't play both sides out of a place of not being authentic. So it plays both sides from a place of authenticity somehow, thus creating conflict. It's not an easy energy to understand. It's not an easy kind of character to understand. There's this feeling of like someone who plays both sides. That's a really important thing that I'm getting. So when the High Priestess comes out, we need to recognize that that energy is playing both arguments. So if like there's two people arguing different things, the High Priestess will agree with each side just on different elements or in different matters. And this will make certain people hate her and this will make certain people love her. But it will always be this interesting point of tension and conflict, because it's very hard to agree on the matters that the High Priestess represents. She's the point of tension. She's the point of disagreement. She represents disagreement. And being okay or peaceful or content with the fact that disagreement may not be possible. There's something like that that's coming through here with the High Priestess. It's not just about the sacred wisdom and knowledge that she holds. It's not just about spiritual knowledge that she holds. It's not just about the mystery that she is a keeper of. She's also a keeper of this and that is true. Both things can be true at once. And she's also a keeper of that interesting tension where neither parties have agreed on something. It kind of makes me feel, something about this reminds me of the Justice card for some reason with the High Priestess, what she's trying to show me. With the Justice card, I feel like she's referring to the Justice card and she's trying to say, when you've got justice is usually where majority has agreed that something is fair or something should be done. Where she represents the fact that sometimes if the majority agrees on something, that does not necessarily mean that it's just or balanced or true. Oh, okay, that's interesting. It's like, just because the majority has agreed on something doesn't mean that it's the just or balanced thing to do. And the High Priestess is very aware of that. But at the same time, she's not able to prove it. But that's where her beauty lies, that she's not able to prove certain things and they will still be true. You can't make something less true just because you don't have physical proof of it. The Page of Pentacles. Page of Pentacles energy is a student energy. So another thing that she's kind of showing me here, the High Priestess energy is showing me here, is that she is both a keeper of knowledge and secrets, but she's also the student of knowledge and secrets, wisdom, esoterics. She's both at once. She is a master and a student in one. And again, it's like two things can be true at once. That's something that she wants to keep bringing the energy back to. Two things can be true at once. Two absolutely contradictory things can be true at once. And so the High Priestess's energy is very much both a master and a student of hidden knowledge and secrets. And the reason she's a master is because she allows herself to be an eternal student. But because she's both a master and a student at once, she's not someone who will ever teach you, because she's only ever studying herself. Okay, so when the High Priestess comes up in a reading, she wants us to recognize that is a time when we should look at ourselves as a master and a student all in once of a particular topic or a particular situation, but also recognize that because you're a master and a student all at once, you cannot be a teacher to others. And maybe that's why she's a keeper of secrets, because she's incapable of actually teaching. There's something, her energy showing up as like extremely masterful and extremely tapped in, but I could never teach you. I could never teach you something that you didn't learn yourself. And this is reminding me, if you watched my the magician card reading, there's a lot of elements of being self-taught in the magician that I was picking up on, and there was a lot of energy of the importance of being self-taught in a very authentic way so that you attract authentic teachers. And there's something that is building on that with the High Priestess that I'm picking up on. She's also self-taught, but she's also self-mastered. But she's self-taught and self-mastered in a way that is only understandable or only understood by her. So she can't teach her knowledge, because her knowledge is so entrenched through her being, because the way that she has taught herself in life, and especially in matters to do with spirituality, esoterics, and the spirit world, the world being behind the veil, she cannot teach you it because it's only available to her, because her process is her own unique process. And she reminds you, well, the knowledge that I have, you could never take it from me. Even if you tried your very best, even if you tried your very hardest, you could not get it from me, because you need to cultivate your own High Priestess energy. So when the High Priestess comes out in a reading, she wants to remind you that it's time to cultivate your own secret knowledge. It's kind of like we can all possess our own secret knowledge that we could never explain or make someone else understand. It's like every single individual on planet Earth, or, every single individual has some sort of secret, sacred knowledge within themselves that they need to discover and they need to learn about. And this is something that they'll never be able to explain to another person in full. This is not something that they'll never be able to make another person comprehend in full. And that is the beauty of it, because it's not meant to be understood. And so with the High Priestess, when she shows up in a reading, it's your reminder to cultivate that. It's like not knowledge that you can pass on to something. She represents knowledge that is impossible to pass on to something. She represents the knowledge that only you can have within yourself, and it's completely private and your own. You can come close to relaying this knowledge or information or wisdom to somebody else, but they will never understand it fully the way that you do. She represents the knowledge, again, building from the magician, where the magician is self-taught. She is also self-taught. The High Priestess is self-taught in her own energy. But the way that she taught herself, the intricacies of the books that she read, she can tell you the books that she read. She can tell you the courses that she took. She can tell you the teachers that she went to. But her process of obtaining this information is so intricate and unique that you could never replicate it. It would not be possible to replicate it even if you tried. And that's what the High Priestess really wants us to remember, and she feels like that's not remembered about her energy often enough. So I just want to refer back to So the columns from left to right are Levi bows and is a yakin, or the two symbolic pillars that are in account of 1 Kings 7:15 to 22 are said to have stood to the north and the south of the door of Solomon's temple. The meaning of their names in Hebrew is uncertain, but it's believed that bows means in his strength, and yakin, also spelled this way, means he establishes. In his strength, he establishes. The pillars are important symbols in both Rosicrucian and Masonic ritual, and like the Chinese yin and yang, they represent dark and light, feminine and masculine. She also they gave her the headdress of Isis, and Isis has a connection to Mary in Christianity as well. So Waite and Smith have made an archetypal connection between Mary and Isis. So they made that connection. But this card represents inner esoteric religious experience or mystery. The fact that it says inner experience, a true mystery is something that the more we learn about it, the more we know that we cannot know it. There's something about the High Priestess that she wants us to remember, that specific wording is really standing out to me. Inner esoteric religious experience or mystery. Inner, it's not collective, it's not a shared experience, it's an inner experience. And that's something that the High Priestess wants to highlight, especially because and that's why the conflict can happen. That's why she also represents the conflict, because the High Priestess represents the energy of you experiencing a spiritual awakening, let's say, or you experiencing a very specific synchronicity, déjà vu, a very specific sign, and taking that sign as something very specific for yourself. But another person will experience a spiritual awakening in a completely different way, from a completely different perspective, that will be completely polarizing to the experience that you had, and could be the total opposite of what you experienced. And that's how she creates chaos. Well, not chaos, but she creates opposition and conflict. So her energy represents this and that can be true, right? That's what we were saying at the start of this reading. This and that can be true. Two things can be true at once. Why? Because both people can have a spiritual awakening. There can be person A and person B that has a spiritual awakening. But person A will have the spiritual awakening in a completely different way to person B. And that's where the clash happens. Because it's not the collective shared experience of a spiritual awakening. It is the inner spiritual awakening. And she shows up in readings where she wants us to be reminded that just because you experience something in a certain way does not mean that that is exactly how another person has experienced that thing. She wants that meaning to be more like, she wants us to be more aware of that meaning as a collective, just because that's an important phrase that's standing out to me. Just because you experience something in a certain way does not mean that the other person has experienced the same thing in the exact same way. Their inner world and their inner experience is vastly different, could be vastly different. And it's not just about spiritual things that happen to us. She talks about like the way you absorbed certain information. That's another thing that she wants to talk about. Two people could attend the same class and learn the same thing and learn something very different from that same information as a result, because of their inner world being so different. So she wants us to know this and that is true at the same time. And just because you, again, to kind of refer back to the Magician, the card that comes before the High Priestess, just because you were self-taught in something and you taught yourself on a certain topic, let's say someone decides to teach themselves, teach themselves history of a certain country. Just because you taught yourself history of a certain country does not mean that another person that went and studied the history of that same country does not mean that the two of you will have the same experience. And you could take vastly different information away from those texts from those teachings, but both of you would be right. It's like both parties are right and both parties are wrong. And the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know anything. Again, going back to that sentence, a true mystery is something that the more we learn about it, the more we know that we cannot know it. So there is this kind of this and that is true. Two things can be true at the same time. And you can learn something and think you're an expert at it now. And then here comes another person with a completely different perspective on the same thing that they've learned. And you realize maybe you'll fight them on it. Maybe you'll create conflict about it and you'll say, no, I'm right. I learned the same thing and I was right. The thing that I've learned is this and you're wrong. How did you derive that outcome from that information? And the other person might feel the same, but only when the two people start communicating and merging and connecting and like really and asking each other, well, why do you think that? Can you explain to me why you learned? Why did you come to this conclusion from that same information that, you know, both of us processed? When people start to understand each other's thinking and each other's subconscious, and she's kind of saying, I represent the subconscious, not from the point of view, it can be from the point of view of dreams and, you know, that kind of subconscious, but it's more so how we understand teachings from a subconscious point of view. The fact that two people can consciously come to the same text or the same book or the same class, but with the help of their subconscious, because their subconscious is always running in the background, absorb completely different information, absorb completely different feelings, absorb completely different energy, and come to two different conclusions. That's what the High Priestess represents. She represents, and she has Torah that she holds in her hands, and it's like, I feel like she's drawing my attention to it, that, you know, we can have one text here, and you'll have, because she's kind of pointing to these pillars as being two different perspectives. This perspective will see Torah from one and come to one conclusion, and this pillar, the white pillar, will look at the text of Torah and come to a different conclusion. So that's the energy that the High Priestess wants us to never forget. Like the way that's the way that I'm seeing it. Is like, don't forget that one piece of information can be processed completely differently by two different groups of people with two different backgrounds, two different upbringings, or even just two people in general. Just recognizing how our subconscious can alter something that seemingly is factual. And so the High Priestess is reminding us that we can pretend that they're factual. Look at the magician coming out here to say hello. We've mentioned the magician so much this time around, but she's kind of saying, like, you could have facts. Yes, you can have facts written on paper, informational facts. You could have something written down like the color of grass is green. You could write it down that way, but two different people from two different backgrounds could come and read that and go, the grass is green, and one person could interpret it from one perspective and look at it as like, why did they say that the grass is green? Did they mean to say the grass is green to be just making a statement, or is it a metaphor, or is it why are they saying the grass is green? It's obvious that the grass is green. Why would they feel the need to put that down on paper? And another person could come down and just read the grass is green and take that as, okay, I'm taking it as the grass is green. That's an instruction. I'm reading it as an instruction for me to understand. You know, it's like, it depends. That's why she's about trust. That's why the High Priestess also represents trust. Because when you read a piece of information that is meant to be factual, a really big factor on whether you interpret that piece of information as it was intended, or are you going to interpret that piece of information as you feel fit, is based on trust. Do you trust that piece of text? And your initial approach to that factual piece of information is really important. Because she's saying you've already, even before you read any sort of factual information, even before you dissect any sort of factual information, you've already made up your mind on what that piece of information is going to give you, whether you realize it or not. And that's kind of the way that she's presenting her energy. You already, with the magician here, this is the energy of like, you've already decided. The magician is self-taught. The magician goes after things that he's curious about. Again, if you want, definitely check out the magician reading because it was very interesting. We got a lot into like breaking down manifestation as well with the magician card. But you will manifest, and that's why the magician is showing up here. She's saying you've already decided what you're going to manifest. The magician comes before the high priestess in the tarot, in the major arcana. You've already decided whether it's right or wrong, whether it's true or not. You've already decided what you're going to manifest out of that factual piece of information. You've already decided what you're going to proceed with based on that piece of information. You're already curious enough to explore a certain avenue. And yes, if you are wise enough, because the High Priestess represents deep wisdom, you will sit in the unknown, you will sit in the gray area, you will sit in the limbo, looking at that piece of information going, I've already, and recognizing my prejudices and my past experiences, as we see here with the Six of Cups, my past experiences have already led me to decide on a certain aspect of this information. But can I sit on this piece of information, this factual piece of information, and see it from a completely different perspective? And she's saying that's where the true wisdom lies. And that's when the High Priestess comes out. You've already decided what you're going to do. And that's why it's her intuition. She represents high intuition as well. You already know intuitively what is right for you. But are you going to question your intuition, or are you going to just go with the flow? And that's also what the High Priestess represents. She's okay. I'm getting this message as well. The High Priestess does not only represent intuition, but also a space where we don't just say, oh, this is definitely my intuition speaking, or my gut speaking to me, where we sit down and question ourselves, is this definitely my intuition speaking, or am I anxious? Is this definitely my intuition speaking, or is it fear? Is it definitely my intuition speaking, or is it some other element affecting me? That's what the High Priestess wants us to look at when her energy comes up in a reading. She likes to challenge, like, are you sure that is your intuition? She doesn't say that it's not. That's what she wants to make that very clear. A lot of the time she'll come up and she'll confirm that, you know, what I'm getting is the High Priestess likes to come out in a reading to confirm someone's intuition. But she also says, when she comes up in a reading, it's important that while it's good to act on your intuition, doing so slowly and intentionally is very important, because you also want to see the other side of the story, the other side of the coin. You kind of want to try and see, albeit not pleasant, albeit not invigorating as the magician energy of curiosity, and it's like, this is the avenue I'm curious about, and this is the exact avenue I want to go out and pursue. The High Priestess challenges us to go and say, before I go after the avenue that I already know I want to go towards, before I continue with my curiosity, let me cross-examine that path of curiosity. Let me just cross-examine, and it's kind of like the High Priestess represents having a debate with yourself, but a healthy debate. Not a anxiety-induced debate, but a debate for the sake of making the best decision for you. And that's how you cultivate intuition, she's saying. You actually can cultivate intuition through debating yourself on various topics. So every time Oh, this is why, like, I am aware that these readings are not getting as much views as like I would really love them to, but I just feel like this is such interesting information. The magician decides that he's curious about something. The magician decides to pursue something because out of sheer curiosity and interest, and the sheer enjoyment of delving into that curiosity and therefore manifesting that path. The High Priestess, along the way where the magician is like creating and manifesting, the High Priestess shows up to say, hey, I see you're manifesting. That's really beautiful. That's really cool that you're manifesting. But is it time to maybe sit back a little bit and have a little debate with yourself why you're manifesting this? Is it maybe time to tap into the very depths of your subconscious and see if your subconscious is agreeing with what is being manifested? Is it time to challenge what you're consciously curious and interested in? And not to kill that curiosity, not to kill that interest, but to see if you can be readjusted. Maybe it's time to sit quietly and listen to your intuition and maybe create a sense of debate within yourself. And notice where your biases lie, because that's what the High Priestess is really showing up as. She's showing up. It's really important to note that when a High Priestess comes out in a reading, from what I'm seeing here in these cards, that we address our own biases. So like if High Priestess is coming out in a reading, she could be talking about intuition, and she's obviously recognizing that there will be different reasons for her to come out. But there will be certain instances that the High Priestess will come out when it's time for us to challenge our own biases and challenge where we biases. I'm just going to leave it as that. She can pop up in a reading when it's time to look at a situation and go, am I being a little bit too biased here? Are my biases overtaking me just because I'm really, really rooting to manifest something? Just because I'm really trying to manifest something without really giving it that space to debate itself? It's almost like a topic that debates itself in your head and in your subconscious. And that's why she represents the dream world and our dreams, because that's where our biases get challenged. Oh, our dreams is where our biases get challenged. Is that? I wonder if that's right. I mean, so the way that she's like, because that's our subconscious. So the way that the energy that I'm picking up on with the High Priestess is like, that's why she rules the dream world, because the dream world is where our subconscious challenges us in the conscious. That's where our biases get challenged. So maybe think about that the next time you have a very interesting dream, and look at your dream from the perspective of bias. Like, was your dream maybe trying to challenge your bias? If you were to look at it at a certain dream through that lens, or is it like not necessarily that a bias is getting challenged in order to become something else? Maybe it's a bias that is challenged, but then it solidifies in itself. Actually, this reminds me, I had a dream the other day, and it's so funny because I feel like this is relevant, actually. I had a dream the other day where I had people in my dream telling me that I was doing the wrong thing and I was making the wrong moves in my life, and things were, like I was wrong. I was basically doing something wrong. And in my dream, very strongly, which I've never felt before, in my dream, I felt like I was like, no, I am absolutely doing the right thing. I'm absolutely doing the right thing. And I know I am. And I stood up for myself. And I stood very firm and I very calmly said, no, I know I'm doing the right thing. And the people backed off. And when I woke up, I remember thinking, is like, oh my God, is my subconscious telling me that I'm doing the wrong thing? Is my subconscious trying to tell me that I'm making wrong decisions? But then, now, especially that I do this reading, what I'm recognizing is like, no, my subconscious was challenging a bias or a self-limiting belief. that whatever I do, whatever choices I make in my life, they're wrong and I couldn't possibly know better. And especially because the people in that dream were kind of people of status. They seemed like people who were at a higher status than me. And yet I was able to really stand up to them and say, no, I'm doing the right thing. I know I am. And they backed off. And so that's the kind of energy that it's not in that that specific example, but the idea that like our subconscious challenges us in our dreams. Our subconscious comes to us and says, hey, not every single time. Like I kind of feel like the High Priestess is highlighting like there can be different types of dreams. There can be prophetic dreams. But it's almost like you can start having prophetic dreams once your biases have been challenged accordingly. And so she wants us to distinguish between prophetic dreams and bias challenging dreams, because there's different types of dreams is what she's giving me as well. So when she comes in, and so like there's two, or not just two, but I'm getting two now, but I feel like there's more. She's giving me the energy of like there's different types of dreams, and the type of dream that you dream at night when you go to sleep depends on what you need in that moment subconsciously. And so the High Priestess will show up in a reading. People need to be very tuned in. Like if you're a tarot reader, what I'm getting is that if you're reading and the High Priestess shows up in your spread, it's really important to tune in to what she's trying to say, because she could have a multitude of different meanings. And we need to be very tuned in with the High Priestess when she comes in as a card. Because she could mean I'm confirming your intuition. She could mean I'm challenging your intuition right now. She could mean I'm challenging your biases. She could mean this thing and another thing, they're both true. She could mean it's time to have some compromise between your biases and maybe the biases that are being imposed on you. She could mean so many things. She could mean pay attention to your dreams. There's so many things that she pulls in that it's so important for us to be very tuned in with her energy. That is very interesting. I also feel something that I'm getting is the word careful. The High Priestess is very careful about when she shows up. And I feel like something that I'm getting is that she shows up in readings where she feels like she will be read correctly. This is so different to the other two cards that I've read so far. The High Priestess likes to show up. If you get the High Priestess in a spread, what I'm getting, technically the High Priestess could come out in every single spread. Like the way she's showing up to me is like, I could come out in every spread. You could ask about any single topic in the world and I will pop up, but only if I know that you can read me accordingly. And so with other cards, it was like, oh, this is why this card shows up. The High Priestess is saying like, I could show up in any sort of reading. I could show up in any sort of reading, but I will only choose to show up in a reading where I will feel like you will read me correctly. As in you, whoever is reading. Where I won't confuse you. And if I do confuse you, it's for a reason. Oh, interesting. So the High Priest, if you ever feel like you pulled the High Priestess and you get a bit stumped by like why she came out, there's a reason why you're meant to get confused by her energy when she comes out. If you are reading on a reading that is like, you know, it's flowing in a certain direction, and then you pull the High Priestess and you go, I'm really confused why High Priestess would come out for this reading. There's a purpose in that. She is meant to confuse. But it's not confusion the same way that, like, for example, the Fool is chaotic and there's confusion with chaos. Again, if you want to watch the Fool reading, I thought that was a very interesting breakdown of the Fool card by the tarot cards as well. But the High Priestess is confusion in order to make you confront your own biases, your own self-limiting beliefs, and to make you realize that even when you think you know everything, you know absolutely nothing. Yeah. Two of Swords. She's meant to put, like, it's almost like a pause that's being put on you. Sometimes the High Priestess, oh, that's so interesting. Okay, I'm going to keep that in mind for sure. Sometimes when she comes out in a reading, it's to make you pause. She's saying you're going too quick with the reading. You're not pausing enough. You're not being slow enough. Especially what I'm getting here, if anyone reads reversals, if anyone reads reversal tarot cards, especially when she comes out in reverse, she's telling you to slow down. You're moving the reading along too quickly. If you do read tarot, that's so interesting as well. It's like she could sometimes come out as well as if she feels like the High Priestess can come out to remind you to pause. So if she comes out at the start of a reading, that can also be an indication that you need to pause before you proceed with the full reading. She could be calling you to pause and to assess all the information in front of you. And the thing about the High Priestess, she observes the information. She doesn't make decisions on the information. That's the important thing that she wants us to remember. And so when a High Priestess comes out in a reading, she wants us to pause and observe the information before we make a decision. Because she's not about deciding on the information. She's about observing it. So I'm just taking the Knight of Cups here. There's something quite sentimental that I'm picking up about the High Priestess as well. She has so many facets. And like she's multifaceted, and that's what she wants us to remember as a card. Like, I'm multifaceted. There's so many sides, and what I'm being shown as well is like a white light going through a prism and breaking into all the different colors. And that's what I'm getting as a metaphor for the High Priestess. We kind of look at her as this white light, but in fact she has like all these different avenues that she splits into. She's connected for some reason in this specific reading. I don't know, for me what's showing up is that she's connected to the Magician, the Hierophant, and the judgment, or not the Judgment card, Justice card. There's something and more. I'm getting and more. But like the High Priestess, what they're showing me is the High Priestess, like, let's say you're doing a reading and let's say she wasn't here. She was like in the deck somewhere. She's like, even when I'm just in the deck somewhere, I'm observing the reading and I am a part of the reading even when I'm in the deck. She's ever present. Really, the thing about the High Priestess is she's ever present. You can't get rid of her. It's like mystery. Mystery is ever present. You can't get rid of mystery. Oh, the High Priestess is a reminder that you will never know everything and you will never have the full answer. And so sometimes she can come out in a reading. If you're doing a reading on something and you're getting frustrated because you feel like you can't get a full answer or a full scope on the situation, she might come out sometimes to remind you, well, you're not meant to know everything and you will never have all the information. Mystery, you can't get rid of mystery. That's what I'm hearing. You can't eliminate mystery. Mystery will always be a part of our being. And this and that will be true. Two things will be true at once. Your biases will always be influencing you. You will always have to confront your biases, whether it be consciously or subconsciously. And you can't escape that. There's no escape from the High Priestess. And you will always have to develop your inner world like a student while also being a master of your inner world. She recognizes that, and I often connect the High Priestess with the higher self. And you know what? That makes sense with the High Priestess being connected to the higher self. I mean, that's my personal interpretation. I don't think I've seen many people have that similar interpretation. Maybe people do. Like, I'm not saying people don't, but that's the way the higher self operates. The higher self is an ever-evolving energy. The higher self is the energy of you that has existed and exists and will exist, you know? The higher self is the energy that we cannot describe very easily. It's the energy that has experienced everything that you have experienced, are experiencing, and will experience in this lifetime. And even beyond that. And that's what the High Priestess is. But she doesn't act like she can teach you this, because every single person needs to teach themselves. It's the energy of like, you need to teach yourself. But as you're teaching yourself, recognizing, I'm a master of my own energy. I won't be able to teach others. I could teach people elements of something. And she's dragging the Hierophant a little bit in this energy. And it's funny because, like, you know, the tarot used to be a playing, like a game. It, like, tarot cards were actually used in a game. And the Hierophant trumps the High Priestess. They actually talk about it in this book, Tarot History, Symbolism, and Divination. He talks about it in this book, how the Hierophant trumps the High Priestess. The Hierophant represents organized religions like Christianity. But the Hierophant can never escape the sacred knowledge and mystery of the High Priestess and the teachings that she keeps and the mystery that she holds. Because although the Hierophant can teach, and that's why the Hierophant represents mentors a lot of the time, the Hierophant can teach, and the Hierophant can be a mentor, knows how to be a mentor. The High Priestess, it's not that she doesn't know how to be a mentor, it's that she knows to some degree that she could never be a true mentor, because we're all, you know, true mentorship doesn't exist almost. And that's something that I'm picking up with the High Priestess here. It's like, you can get a mentor, you can find the most authentic mentor, a mentor that is most true to you. But if you allow that mentor, for example, the Hierophant, take over and tell you what to do with every aspect of your life, that is not mentorship. It turns into something very different. So interesting. I feel like, I think that's kind of it, but I think the High Priestess just wants us to remember that her energy creates conflict too. It's not just about a peaceful pause. It's also about a pause in order to have a conflict. Oh, that's interesting. Sometimes you don't need to pause to have rest and peace. Sometimes you need to pause in order to have a conflict or to challenge something. That is also a very important type of pause. And that's when the High Priestess likes to come out in a reading, when maybe it's time to pause and observe, like, yourself have a little bit of a challenge with yourself or a little bit of a conflict with yourself, or maybe just to simply observe. But she wants us to not forget this conflict side of things. So next time you're doing a reading and the High Priestess comes out, maybe sit, pause, and kind of challenge yourself. Has this reading been correct up to this point? Or is there certain information that I've actually overlooked because of my own biases? That's what I'm getting. That's the final thing that I feel like the High Priestess wants to say. That was so interesting. Again, I'm just enjoying doing these readings so much. If you like this reading, please do like, subscribe, comment. Please tip if you can. You can tip at the bottom. There's a thanks button, a love heart button. If you would like to tip me, I would really, really appreciate it. You can also tip me on my PayPal. The link is below in the description box. If you like my readings and you'd like to get more readings by me, you can join my Patreon. That's also in the description box below. And you can also get a private reading with me on Etsy, also in the description box below. Please support these videos. Please watch these videos, because I would really like these to gain more momentum. I would really like for more people to see these, because I just think they're fascinating and the information that we get is fascinating. And I would really love to see your feedback or your add-on information or opinion about, you know, these specific readings, because they're just very interesting to me. So I'm going to leave it here. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.